Hello and welcome to the Publishing Now Day-to-Day Challenges and Solutions webinar hosted by Westchester Publishing Services and Publishers Weekly. I'm your host, Tyler M. Carey, Chief Revenue Officer of Westchester Publishing Services, and joining me today is your moderator, Jim Milliot, Editorial Director of Publishers Weekly. Jim will introduce our panel in a moment and moderate a Q&A session using the questions that have been submitted prior to today's event. Before we get started, just a reminder that your microphones and video will be off during today's webinar. While we received dozens of questions leading up to today's event that we have used as the basis for our Q&A panel, please do feel free to submit further questions in the Q&A box that you can access in either the top or bottom of your screen by mousing over the control panel for Zoom. If time allows for us to take further questions, we will, and we will also do our best to follow up on other open questions after the webinar today. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Westchester Publishing Services, we are a U.S. employee-owned company founded in 1969 with offices in Connecticut, Ohio, Stratford-upon-Avon in the United Kingdom, and Noida and Chennai, India. We provide editorial and production services to over 200 publishers on over 4,000 projects per year, and we also provide content development and added services to educational content providers via our Westchester Education Services unit. To help set the table as to why we're all here today, I'll share a few thoughts that led to Westchester, Publishers Weekly, and our panelists coming together for today's webinar. In late February, Westchester canceled our attendance at the London Book Fair earlier than many other vendors and publishers out of concern for the growing pandemic. Westchester moved staff to a work-from-home model rapidly in early March, with over 350 staff in the US, UK, and India moving to working from home, using procedures we had set up related to monsoon seasons in years past, but on a much more aggressive timetable and scale. We have been running at full capacity here and offshore since that time, using Dropbox, as well as our award-winning client portal project management system, Adobe PDF markup, Microsoft Office, and other tools to facilitate a similar workflow to that used in our offices pre-pandemic. Around that time, we put together a webinar with some of our colleagues and partners to discuss methods for working from home. The Westchester staff on that webinar walked through our remote workflow, and our partners stepped through the adjustments they had made in response to the pandemic. We also emphasized the need for empathy with staff and partners. This isn't a 9-to-5 job for a lot of people anymore, but one where we're working to adapt around everyone's needs and schedules as they manage everything else that's going on in their lives while working from home during the pandemic. Also, and more importantly, while still getting our client projects done on time and at the quality we're known for producing. As we engaged with our clients about how we could best help, we found ourselves being asked to handle tasks that many clients normally kept in-house. We'll cover more about this in a webinar later in the summer, but Westchester's capabilities go as far upstream as content development and through to the production of printer and digital files for both consumer use and archival use. Publishers found themselves needing to rethink how they produce their books in the work-from-home era. So we found ourselves engaging in a lot of collaborative workflow discussions, less about how many books can we edit and produce for you, but more about what are the phases of your workflow where things are getting stuck, and can we help take on any of those individual tasks to help you get your books to market more efficiently. This webinar came out of those discussions. There was extensive feedback from our partners about topics related to workflow and supply chain that are on their mind, things they're changing with their approaches, and even some tectonic shifts to how they're thinking about their content, including going digital first on some products, looking at POD as a more substantial channel for printing and distribution, reevaluating their in-office workflow versus work-from-home workflow, like scrapping paper proofs, evaluating their warehouses and distribution options, exploring new printing options, and a renewed emphasis on backlist EPUBs. As a sort of spiritual sequel to our March work-from-home webinar, we've partnered with Publishers Weekly and the thought leaders on today's panel to talk about where we are as an industry as of July 2020 and where things are going as it pertains to the business of making books. I'll now toss it to Jim so he can introduce our panel, encourage them to share their thoughts, and then go through the questions that have been submitted for today's webinar.
Thanks, Tyler. We're delighted to be here, and we're going to start right in. Our first panelist is Marina Pedakis-Lowry. She's Senior Managing Editor of Houghton Mifflin Harcourt Books and Music Group. Marina is a managing editorial operations professional with more than 20 years experience with culinary, lifestyle, reference, and young readers books, and has held positions with HarperCollins, PRH, Oxford, UK, and Scholastic. So Marina, the Zoom spotlight is all yours.
Hi, folks. I wish I could see you all, but I'll just pretend I can. Thanks, Jim. So I'm Marina Padakis Lowry. I've been at Houghton Mifflin Harcourt Books and Media almost 10 years now. We're a smaller trade publisher with all the advantages of being part of a much larger learning company. You probably know us primarily for education publishing. So we have a long history in trade publishing, and we publish a wide variety of trade books for children and adults, everything from Curious George to Lord of the Rings to Kwame Alexander. And we also have our own audio studio and HMH Productions, which creates original multimedia like Carmen Sandiego. I'm senior managing editor in this group, and I work primarily with our lifestyle, culinary, and young readers lists. I oversee the lifestyle production editorial team and a lot of freelance vendors. And I also do title administration, budgeting, and I project manage a portion of the lifestyle list. My specialty is in illustrated books and rush workflows. Like most of you, we left our offices in mid-March. HMH has been very supportive of our work from home situations. They provided laptops and peripherals like screens and keyboards, so we're nicely set up at home. Most of our internal systems are web-based with single sign-on, and we have network access via VPN. For meetings, we recently introduced Microsoft Teams to replace Webex. This has been great as it's also integrated with our other systems and provides almost a social media in-house for us to interact while we're away. And HMH has also been holding bi-weekly all-company kind of town hall meetings for COVID updates. They've regularly been surveying us about how we're doing working from home, and also our wishes for working from home in the future. So we'll see where that goes. Books and Media is split over two main offices, although we are worldwide. We work out of Boston and New York. And so, we were to some degree already set up for success with remote meetings. We've continued to conduct all our meetings as before. We experience the same issues as many of you do: connection, sound quality, tech issues, people forgetting to mute. But in general, we've managed to function much as we did before. In fact, interestingly, many colleagues report that they feel like they're interacting more with coworkers face-to-face on video than they might have in the office where they might have just picked up the phone. Most of our workflow is already close to 100% digital. All of our copy editing and proofreading is done in Work with track changes and in Adobe Acrobat on PDFs. A few of our groups are still doing some things on paper out of necessity, but they have successfully transitioned since we've been at home. We provide Acrobat 10 to our employees. We have cheat sheets with best practices for markup and a few super users to help anyone out who might be struggling. In general, we only use freelance vendors who are compliant with these guidelines. Managing ed in general won't accept changes on paper or in email. Everything needs to be marked on Word documents or in PDF. We're also in the process of introducing new tools like feature proofs, which really streamlines proof review and markup and simplifies collaboration. We also review all of our blue lines digitally on Insight. Really, the only thing we're still doing in hard copy is color proof review. There's no real replacement for seeing that in hard copy. So our production and design departments are still getting shipments of proof and reviewing. So gold star to those guys. It includes some functions similar to Dropbox and WeTransfer, so we can give freelancers and outside vendors limited access for download and upload. So that's worked well for us. Like many managing ed departments, we use quite a few. Sorry, I understand. My husband's waving at me, telling me that the audio is lost. I don't know why.
It's back, it's back.
It's back. Okay. I'll skip back a little bit. I don't know how long it's dropped. Let's see. I'll just skip back a little bit here. I was talking a little bit about the things that were, our process of review. Okay, someone's telling me only a moment or two. Good. So the things that we review basically everything digitally, including blue lines. The only thing we're still doing in hard copy is color proof review. So our production and design departments are still mailing things to and fro. And all of our file storage and management is done on Box. It includes functions similar to Dropbox and WeTransfer. And we can give freelancers and outside vendors limited access for download and upload. So that's worked quite well for us so far and replaced FTP and other systems. Like many managing ed departments, we do use quite a few freelance vendors, compositors, designers, copy editors, proofreaders, and indexers. As I mentioned, they are expected to use our systems. We use a lot of freelance vendors, particularly for comp, specialty copy editing and proofreading. Also for more time-consuming tasks like second proofreading and merging corrections. Oh, the audio is lost again. I'm sorry, guys.
It's back.
You're back.
So let's see, I'll skip back a line here. So we do use quite a few freelance vendors, particularly for comp, specialty, copy editing, and proofreading, and also for more time-consuming tasks like second proofreading and merging corrections. I don't know what's going on with the sound here, folks.
You're good.
I'm good? Okay. Yeah, some folks are saying they're having trouble hearing me, unfortunately. I will provide a script of this later. So anyway, so more time-consuming tasks, second proofreading, merging corrections, and this really allows our staff to focus on what they do best. And it also helps us take on, drop-in projects and meet any kind of schedule, no matter how tight. So someone's suggesting I get a little closer to the microphone, so I'm going to do that right now. Okay, so Westchester, for example, we do use them a fair amount, both for comp for many of our illustrated nonfiction titles, but also for any projects or isolated stages of projects where we need tight turnarounds. For example, a heavy round of corrections. I come to them with all kinds of crazy things and they haven't said no to me yet, so. In closing, we have really a wonderful team here at HMH. Everyone's really pulled together and supported one another through this tricky time of all of us being at home. We've kept all of our projects on track, moving along. And, despite all of the changes and ongoing pivoting, we're still knocking it out of the park, publishing on time and so on. So thanks for listening, and back to you, Jim.
Great. Hey, thanks very much, Marina. All right. Move right into Kathy Feljar, is Publishing Operations Director for Princeton University Press. Kathy's responsible for a team of 25, including editorial, production, manufacturing, digital production, metadata, and ebook staff. Kathy has operations, editorial, production, manufacturing, and systems implementation experience in various positions with Macmillan, Columbia University Press, Harper, and Cambridge University Press. The floor is all yours, Kathy.
Thank you, Jim. I'm going to speak for a few minutes each on operations during the pandemic and also equity and inclusion. So I'm Kathy Felgar. I'm Publishing Operations Director at Princeton University Press. We publish about 250 books per year and are one of the larger American university presses. We publish in a wide variety of subject areas and trade as well as academic books. But first, on the operations side, similar to Marina, we went wholly remote in mid-March, and our current target return date is September 8th, although that's subject to a lot of discussion about what it will look like, phasing it in, what changes are going to be needed to the office environment, and whether it's a good date still. Luckily, we were already almost completely digital on all our production processes. But since the pandemic began, we have relinquished hard copy printer halftone proofs and approving advanced copies of printed books for the most part. Also, very luckily, we had adopted Zoom for phone, video calls, and chat last February. And our systems are also largely web-based like Marina's. We use Biblio, including the Biblio DAM system and contracts, rights, and royalties system since March 2018. We use OneDrive, SharePoint, and we've added Adobe Document Cloud to review cover proofs as of the end of April. All our copy editing is in Word using track changes, except for our books that are submitted in tech. We have some work in process files on local servers, and we do have VPN connections that we've had in the beginning. We had some problems with people connecting. That's largely solved. Some production editors brought their work monitors home because PE work tends to be difficult comparing one PDF to another or one level of cover proof to another. We had some Zoom bombings in the early days, but that's all been resolved, knock on wood. We've adopted more flex time for staff who need it due to working remotely, and we encourage them to use COVID-related paid sick time when they need to. In terms of collegiality, and we've tried to replicate it as much as we can through Zoom. We have open Zoom chat groups for gardening, step counting, recipe exchange, general fun. We have a lot of pet pictures. We have one for equity and inclusion. We have a Thursday evening chat, which we've had some authors come and speak at. We have a new tradition called Friendship Fridays, where we reach out to a staff member that we haven't met with during the week. And we have a virtual shout out board that replicates the hall whiteboard we had in the office in Princeton to commend staff who've achieved something great in that week. We've had trivia games, and we're currently running a Zoom background competition. Staff is encouraged to take paid time off. We've found a lot of people just aren't taking vacation as usual, so we're encouraging them to do that. And we've instituted extra paid holidays to provide email and Zoom-free days. So we had extra days around Memorial Weekend, the 4th of July, and also we'll have them around Labor Day. We're watching print capacity very closely. We have a wide range of manufacturing specs, and almost all our four-color work is printed overseas. We moved a lot of the work from China to Eastern Europe during the tariff days, but of course the pandemic hit Europe as well. So right now we're doing well in that arena, but we're watching the print capacity closely domestically also with the consolidation in that sphere. We're trying to use more intentionality around unusual trim sizes and cover treatments. And we have not delayed any pub dates, but we keep hearing that some of the big five are doing that. So we're watching the fall capacity really closely. We're worried about a crowded pipeline. And like everybody else, we're worried about the election and what effects that may have on book buying. So I've been looking at diversifying our print suppliers a little bit and putting more books into short digital print or gap strategies in case we need to do sudden reprints. And we've also just been generally expanding POD and digital short print run in general, and especially internationally. We're looking at expanding with international partners for POD. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to equity and inclusion. It's a big topic in the news, and it's an essential part of our mission and code of conduct at PUP. We are going to send out links in the white paper to both of those. I've been at Princeton 2.5 years, and during that entire time, we've been engaged in a deep review and reflection on equity and inclusion through all facets of our business. So I'll give you some examples. First, with authors, we established a global equity grant program, and a link to that will be included in the white paper. The purpose of that is authors and underrepresented groups who are under contract are invited to apply for grants to assist either their work on the book or the promotion of the book. I'm very proud of that. And we've also had a exploration of author gender demographics. It's in 2 phases. We engaged 2 grad students or university fellows to look at our author gender demographics by subject area. They already completed their first round of analysis a few months ago on books that are already published by subject area and made some recommendations to us around accountability, transparency, access, and network expansion. So the next round is going to be, they're going to look at the same demographics on our forward pipeline. We're also discussing adding opt-in questions for both authors and peer reviewers for them to voluntarily self-identify gender and ethnicity or race, possibly using the Lee and Low survey categories as our starting point. We're going to not gather the data from authors until after contract signing, so we can be quite sure it's not influencing our publishing decisions. Then looking at the area of staff. I mentioned we have a code of conduct that includes equity and inclusion, and that's also a category for in our annual performance review for managers. We have several different levels of equity and inclusion teams or councils, including a strategic initiative. We've had multiple rounds of staff education, both mandatory and voluntary. So we've had training around difference, communication, anti-racism, microaggression, and unconscious bias. We brought in Cornell Interactive Theater Ensemble, otherwise known as CITE, C-I-T-E, in May 2019. And also the Equity Paradigm came in to speak in February 2020 on foundations and racial equity. I think I mentioned that we have an E&I Zoom chat where people can post resources and thoughts. We got the day off from work on Juneteenth. The press subsidized staff purchase of 2 books on anti-racism from Black-owned or independent bookstores to encourage learning and reading. And I'm wondering whether some book clubs may emerge from that reading list. We're looking into compensation and promotion analysis, and we're expanding our recruiting outlets and looking at our job descriptions and requirements, like questions like, is a BA essential for this job? We're consciously changing to the use of the pronoun they in job descriptions. We're looking to expand our mentorship, including cross-press mentoring for people of color. We have paid internships in both Princeton and Oxford UK offices. In Princeton, the interns get housing allowance. This summer, we've been working with CCNY interns. Next summer, we're working with the AAP UNCF program for students from historically Black colleges and universities. That was going to be this summer, but we held off because of the pandemic. And then in the UK, we work with Oxford Brookes. They subsidize tuition for students to attend master's program in publishing, and they are also offered a 3-week internship. We recently joined with Chicago Manual of Style and several other university publishers to capitalize the word Black when it refers to race or ethnicity. And in terms of our board of trustees, we're thinking that if any openings occur, diversity will be a priority in that selection. And lastly, vendors. I've been collecting equity and inclusion statements and hiring practices from vendors we work with. And in the coming months, I aim to explore ways of diversifying our pool of freelancers. So thank you very much. And hello to all my friends and colleagues and former colleagues out there. Thank you.
All right, great. Really informative. Thank you, Kathy. All right, next up we have Brian O'Leary, Executive Director of the Book Industry Study Group. BISG hosts a related webinar on specific workflow topics on June 9th. And Brian is already here, ready to give us an update on what's been going on since that webinar and talk about some other things affecting the industry. Brian?
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate it. As Jim indicated, I'm the Executive Director of the Book Industry Study Group. This is the organization that's responsible for improving the efficiency and effectiveness of the book industry supply chain. We do most of our work through 5 standing committees that touch upon topics that include metadata, rights, the BISAC subject codes, which we maintain each year, supply chain, and workflow. We've been virtual, actually, for the most part, since the beginning of 2017. So this is a little bit of old hat for us. We switched to Zoom then to support all of our committees. Since 2017, we've also delivered roughly 2/3 of our programming online because we have a distributed audience around the United States, as well as some in Canada and in Europe. What we found since leaving our New York-based office at the beginning of March is that there's a continued need for connection. Particularly, we see this in our committees, which meet monthly, and communication around topics that range from the things that are kind of our bread and butter, like Onyx 3 and its rollout, to remote workflows, to next generation supply chain management. We're actually in the US market, we're the only publishing organization that's focused on workflow and supply chain at a time when in the wake of the pandemic, everybody's become acutely aware of the importance of workflows and supply chain for everything from books to toilet paper. And in response, what we did was essentially triple our programming. We had 5 events in May, 7 in June, we're planning 7 in July, and we'll have 8 next month, in part to a set of presentations that are tied to a repositioned annual meeting. We're not going to be doing it in person this year for reasons that everybody understands. Our committees continue to meet on a monthly basis. They've been both a source of support, but also a lot of progress. We've been doing work in our workflow committee, Jim referenced it a little bit ago, to better understand the tools and resources that are available. We did a webinar just last month to kind of preview a report that'll likely be out in August that will answer hopefully some of the questions that are being raised in the webinar chat. The other piece of the puzzle too is that we're continuing to invest in things that we think are really useful for the industry post-pandemic. We're conducting an assessment of rights, return on investment, essentially for rights solutions in both for rights and royalties, and we'll be out with a report on that probably at the end of September, if not early October. It's kind of in many ways the best of times and the worst of times for us. The worst of times because our members and the community as a whole is very directly affected, and we're trying to find ways to alleviate the pain. But it's also something that we've been preparing for the last 3 years, and we're happy to continue to provide service wherever we can for the free publishing in the United States and around the world.
Okay. Anything else, Brian? Or should we move on?
No, I think that covers what I wanted to just do as an introduction. I want to make sure we have time for panels.
All right, great. Thanks very much. All right. And batting cleanup is Kelly Gallagher, VP of Content Acquisition at Ingram. Kelly joined the company in 2012 and manages publisher relations for North America, which includes Lightning Source Print on Demand and Core Source Digital Assets. Prior to joining Ingram, he was at Balco for 6 years, serving as VP of Publisher Services Businesses. Kelly, it's all yours.
Great, thanks, Jim, and God bless technology. Glad to better late than never. So many of you know Ingram is the world's leading wholesaler. Been in the book business for many years. In addition to that, our distribution business serving over 600 publishers, and of course our business Lightning Source that is tied to both of those businesses, providing both print services to publishers and then also manufacture on demand directly into our wholesale and distribution business. I'll be real quick. Comments I wanted to make were that 2020 for us started out like any other year, shaking off the busyness of our holiday season and ramping up our strategies for 2020. And our January and February were right in line with expectations. And then March happened, a pandemic, all bets were off. You know, we quickly created a COVID task force that met daily. And it was really focused on two things that were a bit unique to us: the health and safety of our employees, of course, and especially our employees in our warehouses and print facilities. We were deemed an essential business. And so for us, ensuring that we had the right protocols in place was very important. And we're proud to say that our facilities were able to remain up and running through the pandemic because of what we were able to do early on in the process to ensure that we had a safe environment for working. It was a massive global effort for us as well, having offices or manufacturing centers from California, Oregon, Indiana, Tennessee, New York, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, North Carolina, the UK, the AU, with each of these sites having different needs and requirements based on state and local guidelines. It really was a real harrowing effort. Making an orderly transition to work from home for us was also a challenge, largely because we have two large client service call centers. And so moving all of those remote, yet keeping those teams somewhat linked together and connected and talking was really important for us. So, you know, for Ingram, the challenge for us was just keeping the supply chain moving. While we never would have asked for it, we were in a unique position to serve the industry, again, because of our global wholesale network, direct connectivity to 600 distributed publishers, and then the direct tie-in to manufacture on demand. You know, we were able to, we think, assist both publisher and retailer. For the retailer, it was this quick shift to consumer direct fulfillment, direct to home. And for publishers, it was to help them quickly set up titles into print on demand when they lost the ability to ship for themselves. The best example of that, and I think we're going to send something that was put out publicly from Duke University, where essentially they had to shutter their warehouse very quickly. And so over a weekend, we were able to load a couple thousand titles for them and create essentially a virtual warehouse for them. And then most recently, with the death of George Floyd, all of the social justice titles that many of them in deep backlist, helping those titles remain available to readers was really important for us. In fact, we were able to titles that you saw in the New York Times over the last couple of weeks were titles that we were able to manufacture. So it's been a wild ride for us, but we're glad to have been able to help along the way.
All right. I think that wraps up the formal presentation. Now I'm going to move right into questions.
We'll move into the Q&A session. And just a reminder for everybody, microphones are going to remain muted. So if you have any questions, please do put them in the Q&A panel. I will say just over the past half hour, we've gotten dozens of great questions, augmenting the ones we already had in the pipeline for today. A lot of them touch on topics that I know are really important to the attendees, like which tools to use, which resources to use. A lot of very good questions about DEI that deserve responses. So I'll cover more of this in the closing today, but there will be a white paper as well as a recording available after the webinar, and we'll work together to try to come up with answers to as many of the questions as possible. Jim, I'll turn on everybody's video. and let you moderate the panel.
All right, thank you, Tyler. Okey-doke. All right. All right, I'll just have one little glitch here, and there I go. All right. So off we go. One of the big surprises I think everybody recognized so far this year is that while many people are expecting unit sales to go down quite a bit, according to BookScan at least, they're up a little bit. So I was wondering what you've seen in the way of changing sales patterns. You know, what's been working, what hasn't, and maybe also a little bit of a breakdown by channel. Kelly, could you start us off on that?
Sure, I'll leave the subjects and the segments to our publisher group. But, you know, for us, it was, I think, early on a surprise to see strong sales continue, but it became very segmented. If you are a subscriber to NPD, you would see a very different look at what has been succeeding and where it's been succeeding. So obviously bricks and mortar stores down, but some of the online stores up, especially some of the newer stores that have taken some interesting market share like bookshop.org, Walmart, Target seeing really strong sales. And so I think the net of the story doesn't really tell the whole story, in that it's just been a very shifting landscape. So while some aren't feeling it, others are, both negatively and positively, I would say, from both the retail and the publisher side. But it's really been a interesting, I think, shift in segmentation from where it's selling and what's selling.
All right, great. Brian, what's your perspective?
I think there's been a real shift in the overall pattern for demand. I think it varies a lot by types of publishers. Marina had a chance to talk a little bit about the different types of books that they do. There's clearly been a shift as well to things that are practical for a teach from home moment, which is what we're facing at least until the end of June this year. I think that the market overall showed a remarkable ability to adapt, but we're also thinking that we need to take a look at the supply chain as a whole, because it was fairly rigid, and a lot of things that were done were kind of skin of our teeth or temporary solutions. So we expect coming out of the pandemic to convene some conversations about what we could do differently going forward to increase the agility of the marketplace as a whole.
Okay, and from the publisher side, Kathy, what have you seen?
Well, like I think many, we saw a dip in sales in second half of March and through April, but then a rebound in May and a strong June. We saw a larger portion of our sales were ebook during that entire period, and we're monitoring that to see whether that becomes the new normal. I don't know. We're working hard to support independent bookstores in whatever way we can. And so I want to give a shout out to bookshop.org. And we have an audiobook program that we started, and we tried a web sale for the first time in June. That was a big success.
All right, great. Mariana, what do you think?
Well, at HMH, we certainly, like Princeton has been selling a lot of ebooks, as you might imagine, but we continue to sell lots of print books, some more cookbooks and special diet books. People have been gaining weight and are concerned about it, cooking more at home. And we've also been responding to search trends, for example, for kids' workbooks. So we have quite a few of those on our backlist, and we pulled some of those up, refreshed them for current times, and we got them out to market quickly to satisfy that demand.
And Jim, anecdotally, it's been really interesting to see how at the beginning people were really focused on kind of meeting the needs, and then slowly, as they got used to the new normal, cookbooks, bread baking, gardening, as people kind of settled in, decluttering books. Really interesting, and how that will affect us going forward. It'll be also, I think, interesting to see where we put some focus on as far as publishing segments.
Right. Kathy had alluded to in her remarks about some concerns about printing capacity in the fourth quarter, and what the relationship with China and some other overseas markets is. I was just wondering what the other three think. What's your vision into what printing is going to be like for the rest of the year?
Well, I hope it's good, but the reality is that it may well be limited. We've had over the last 6 months the bankruptcy declared by the largest book printer in the United States, and the second largest book printer at that time, essentially exiting the market and putting its assets for book printing up for sale. So that's a significant blow to capacity, and a number of titles, even though they're not the publishers here today, Kathy and Marina, aren't necessarily delaying significant numbers of titles. The reality is that a number of publishers have, and we could see some bigger books hitting in the fall. So it's something that, again, we would want to take a look at, and I expect both in August and September. It's part of an ongoing conversation we'll have in our supply chain committee.
Yeah, I would say, Jim, that we definitely know. We don't think, we know there's going to be a compression in the market, even just because of how publishers are choosing what to publish and what not to publish. While Princeton really did not adjust their print schedule, meaning they've got their regular set of titles coming out from now to the end of the year, other publishers held back, and some held back rather significantly, especially some very large titles. And so there is a finite amount of space in the US for print capacity. And so we know that that is going to have an impact. And so to the extent that publishers reserve that space early, we also see the patterns changing where more and more publishers are looking to do some short runs prior to maybe doing an offset, because the cash availability, kind of just having dug out of a really tough economic time. And so we know even for digital printing, which is where Lightning Source, focuses a lot of its energy beyond just the one book at a time on demand, we're already seeing some strong spikes on newer titles or brand new titles where they're being printed in smaller quantities. And so I think the whole approach is not only going to be compressed, but it's also, we're going to see some significant change in how publishers are going about kind of solving for the second half of the year.
Before I let you go, Kelly, you didn't mention, but I know we wrote about on Monday, and we're making a multi-million-dollar investment in upgrading Lightning Source POD and some of its distribution facilities. What I'm really interested in is how is that going to affect what you do internationally, even for American publishers?
Yeah, thanks. So obviously the pandemic has changed the shape of our business, not unlike anybody else's. And we're doing more books that are needing immediate access into the market, as opposed to, the typical, print couple cartons, send it back to a publisher, and then they can put it into the marketplace. And so it's really put our system more in demand for greater capacity, for quick turnaround. And that's true globally. We've seen a slower rebound in the UK and Australia, but our numbers would indicate that while it was a slower rebound, it's now having a shorter but higher spike in getting books back into the distribution channels. And so the UK really did not climb out of this until mid-May, and now they're needing some significant capacity to get back that market up and going, and then also for Australia. And for US publishers listening in, again, you have to think through what your strategy is to ensure that you've got availability for those titles that that maybe are going to be going out at a more rapid rate than even your international distribution warehouses or your distributors can handle. And so it's something I think that all publishers should be thinking about internationally.
Can I add there? About 20% of sales at Princeton are from the UK Europe office. And we've been doing for about a year and a half now, simultaneous printings, US and UK for certain titles. And we're also exploring methods of printing locally. We have regional editions for Australia, India, and China. And we're exploring Latin America now as well. And we're pumping up our work with one vendor to get books into Japan more easily.
All right, Marina, what is HMHC for the rest of the year?
As far as printing capacity, I mean, we are continuing apace printing, most of our illustrated books in China. So far, we haven't had any issues. If there are any issues, our suppliers have relationships with, other suppliers in Asia as well. So, that's good news. And like other publishers, we are subject to a quota for case-bound books that we do print in the United States. So we do, have to take care with the number of, a lot of planning ahead to ensure that, we stay within that quota. But so far, we've been okay.
All right, well, that's good. Glad to hear that. All right, I know our time is getting a little short, so I was wondering if we could just conclude with all the panelists maybe talking about one or two things that they think the pandemic, changes in practice that the pandemic has caused that might last going forward. Who wants to go first, Kelly?
I guess I can. Yeah, this has really been it's been a learning experience for everybody. Anyone that claims to be a wise sage on this at this point, I probably would not give full credence to. And so it's a learning process for everyone. I think the level of collaboration in our industry has never been better to solve for this. We have been listening as much as doing at Ingram. And so I think the first thing is we need to continue to collaborate on this. It's a big enough publishing industry for all of us. And to the extent that we can share best practices and figure some of this stuff out together, I think is the right approach. I don't think there's competitive advantage in solving problems during crisis. There are certainly some things we need to keep proprietary to our own business strategies, but to the extent that we have these kinds of conversations, I think it's really important. For Ingram, we have seen this bounce between consumer direct fulfillment, which is what we saw early in the pandemic when Amazon shuttered and was not taking orders. They didn't shutter, excuse me, when they stopped taking orders direct from publishers. And so having a consumer direct fulfillment strategy, whether it's working with Ingram or someone else to ensure that you've got access to the supply chain during the next thing that happens, I think is really important. And then also, having a contingency for when the gates open back up and the warehouses need to be refilled. Bulk ordering is really had a significant bounce back, and looks like CDF is going to roll back around for Christmas time. And so really paying attention to this new normal as opposed to hoping for the old normal to come back, I think is going to be really important to collaborate, to be prepared for what that strategy is for how to get books directly to consumers, or how to keep warehouses going through the whole thing. I think those would be my big takeaways.
All right, Brian, how about you, your vision?
Well, I'll echo Kelly's observation that we're all in the middle of the, it's hard to figure out what the shape of the glass is when you're on the inside. And it's hard to be an expert in in an event we've never experienced before. What we're trying to do is look at issues that are supply chain related. Our membership, Jim, as you know, consists of everybody from publishers and distributors through to retailers, libraries, and the industry partners that support us. And so our mindset is really what makes this work? How can we collaborate together? And I agree with Kelly that this has been a moment when a lot of competitive relationships have been put aside in favor of getting the thing done that needs to be done for the benefit of the industry. But we need to figure out what that looks like going forward. I think that there's a question in the chat that you may have seen, Jim, about what's going on with education as an example. And we haven't talked about it. The publishers who are represented here aren't, although HMH is as a significant educational arm. Marina's working in the trade side of it. You know, we're really concerned about it because the selling has been for in many ways in person, and that's no longer possible. And it's also going to be very much driven by physical materials as well as digital, and that mix has changed. So trying to figure what that looks like is an open question. We're actually, one of our events in August is going to be a conversation with the folks at NACS, the National Association of College Stores, just to talk about what they're seeing and what the purchase patterns might be going forward. But they don't have a crystal ball either. We're trying to figure out how things are shifting in real time.
Right, yeah, it's certainly a moving target. With that in mind, Marina, what do you think that might be a takeaway for you at HMH?
It's hard to say what it's going to look like, you know, even 6 months from now. But you know, we are working with every new thing that comes down the road. I mean, we are continuing to publish most of our list right on schedule. Acquisitions are continuing as they ever have. You know, there have been some hiccups, for example, books where we haven't been able to complete the photo shoot. So of course we've had to delay the book. Or authors, you know, wanting to publish at a later time because they really would like to tour. But then we've also had some incredibly successful virtual events, you know, authors like Veronica Roth, where someone would love to go to her event but is not able to go. She had virtual events where hundreds of people were able to go who otherwise would not have had access to it. So I think, you know, we're going to see a lot more of these really successful events down the road, you know, that may even, you know, replace in-person events, you know, for some authors down the road. So it's really opened the door to a lot of new and exciting ways to promote trade books.
All right, great. Keep going. All right, Kathy, you got the last word.
I agree with Marina. We've had some great success with author virtual events, and also in terms of ways of working in publishing. I think my guess is we're going to see increased flex time, increased work from home. We've made it work this long. It would be hard to argue that we can't keep going when that best applies.
Okay, all right, Tyler, I believe I'm handing it back to you for the last word. Or not. All right.
Tyler might be on mute.
Here we go.
It's that pesky mute button. There we go. We got almost to the end without me screwing it up. Okay. All righty. Well, Jim, I want to thank you for moderating today's panel. I'd like to thank a lot of folks, actually. You know, firstly, thanks to Publishers Weekly for facilitating today's panel and Q&A. As noted earlier, Publishers Weekly will be putting together a white paper with the takeaways from today's session, which we'll be emailing out to all the attendees, including links to the resources our panelists referenced today.